booktuber, sometimes you just have to step back and go, some months are about quality over quantity. Hello my lovely friends, it's Margaret. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about what I liked and did not like about all of the books I read in April. April is a pretty average month for me as far as the number of books that I read goes. I read 5 books this month. I did booktube beta, so that's part of why I did not get as much reading done as I would have liked. Also, I did a little bit of mood reading this last month. I just picked a couple of things up. I was like, you know what? They're not on the TBR, but I want to read them right now, so I went ahead and read them. Alright, I am not wanting to sit here standing in the nice bright sunlight for long, so I just want to, let's jump into the books. The first book that I finished was The Atlas 6 by Ollie Blake. If you've watched the first impressions of Dark Academia that I did with Cal over at Retrieving Books, I am kind of dipping my toes in the Dark Academia waters, and this is the second book that I read for a vlog that will be coming up soon. I really enjoyed this. I ended up giving it 5 stars. It's about 6 people that get recruited to the Alexandrian Society. So basically in this world, the Library of Alexandria, they burned it to the ground, but they moved everything to a safer, different location before they did. There's magic in this world, and these 6 kids have been recruited into the society because eventually 5 of them will move on to become full-fledged members of the society, and well, the last one, I mean, I feel like it's kind of obvious what will happen to the last one. I really enjoyed this. I liked most of the characters. There's one character that I don't think you're obviously you're not supposed to like them. They're supposed to be an absolute tool, and being in their point of view was just really annoying and frustrating because you're like, oh my god, you're such a prick. Please stop talking. I don't want to be in it. I feel like I need a shower being in your head. However, I did adore the other 5 for the most part. I'm interested to see what they're going to do with these characters. This is a very character-driven novel. You are in these 6 people's heads. You are going to be walking through, in some cases, them just sitting and thinking about stuff, and I know that that's not going to be to everyone's taste. There were a couple of places that I feel like, you know, maybe we were in people's heads, and not just the characters I disliked, but maybe we were spending a little too much time ruminating on certain things. But the way that things these smallest things in this book will have repercussions at the end, and there are certain things that are brought up that I think are going to have repercussions in the next book, or it's going to unlock some stuff, and we haven't, I feel like there is so much promise there. This was very much a setup book, but I really enjoyed being with these characters and getting to know this world to some extent. There are a few scenes that happen while they're in class, but you don't get a lot about the academia part because it's almost like a postgraduate kind of thing that's going on. It's not a structured, basically they're here, you're going to sit and talk about these things, and then we're going to set you loose for most of the time that you are here. That's basically they meet once a week, and they're free to pursue their own studies. I thought the ending of this was just I knew what had to be happening, but the way that it was done was just mind-bogglingly good. It was so just oh, okay, well then. It left me really excited for the next book, and I'm kind of mad that I have to wait because the next thing that I picked up was Batman Year One by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli. So yeah, the new Batman movie came out, and I absolutely adored it. Again, we have booktube beta stuff of me talking about that lovely experience. Every time I see a Batman movie, they always manage to key in to a different part of Bruce Wayne and Batman's character that I love, and I think they really dug in this one. They finally really dug into the things that make Batman my favorite superhero. And because it got certain people into Batman, and they were talking about reading Batman Year One and reading Long Halloween, which are two of the comics that the Batman is based off of, or were inspirations for the Batman. I was like, ooh, it's been a while since I read those, so I decided to pick up Batman Year One, and I really enjoyed it. So this is about Bruce Wayne and Jim Gordon. We follow their 2 points of view. For Bruce, he has just returned to Gotham after spending many years abroad, blah, 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 all of that training stuff. We know, y'all have seen Batman Begins probably, so you know what all went down there. He is getting ready to start doing the Batman thing, but he's still figuring out exactly what that needs to look like. So we start with Bruce Wayne before he's a Batman. We also get to see a little bit of Selina before she's Catwoman. And then we have Jim Gordon, who has been transferred to the GCPD because he ratted out some crooked cops at his last job, and this was the only police department that would take him so he could still have a job. I really liked the way that this took you through both of them and their thought process, the way that it worked with Jim getting used to Gotham, getting kind of a feel for, like, how things worked in Gotham, and also being confronted with just the absolute corruption of the Gotham City Police Department. I think that's one of the things that people really miss out on when they're like, why doesn't Batman just let the police handle it and give all his money to all this stuff? Because the people he can give his money to are all freaking corrupt. Like, it's not just the police, it's the mayor, it's the people, like, all of the people at the top, all of the people in charge of things are corrupt. I really liked it. I really liked the art style. I liked what David Mazzucchelli was doing with color and what he would use, like how he kind of used color to indicate character, to indicate shifts in scene and in place. It was really, like, just watching how he used changing the color palette to signify we changed places. He didn't even need to, like, actually, there was no need for there to be, like, a descriptor that said, hey, we've changed from here to here. He just used color to figure that out. I really liked it. I was actually a little worried picking this one up because Frank Miller, while he is very gifted as a writer, and I do think he's done some really interesting stuff with Batman, he also does not have my favorite style of drawing. And so I really enjoyed the fact that we got all of his fantastic writing and then a drawing style that was a little bit more to my tastes when it comes to what I like to see in comic books. I gave this 5 stars. I was really impressed by the amount of stuff that they were able to cover in 4 issues and how they were able to kind of build up to where Bruce Wayne was going to, like, where we kind of know him in the popular consciousness. All right, the next book that I finished was A Mad Ship by Robin Hobb. I ended up giving this 4 stars. So if you'll remember from last month, I did read Ship of Magic, the first book, and it was not, I think it made my least favorite books of the month, actually. I think it was the one that I was like, why? I had much trepidation going into this one because I was very worried that we were going to spend a lot of time in people's heads that I didn't want to be in, because that was my main thing going on in the last book. I think part of it may have had to do with the fact that it was an audiobook. When I was listening to, I listened to this as audiobook too because I ran out of time to be able to read it physically, but I started this physically, and it was a much more enjoyable experience being able to actually, like, see Robin Hobb's words instead of listening to them with this person's voice who I don't know why they pronounced certain words the way they did. Like, and it wasn't like we're mispronouncing the word or they're just pronouncing it in a different dialect, like in the way that, like, the way that she would, like, put her inflection and the dramatic delivery of some of the things that I don't recommend the audiobook. If you can at all avoid it, do avoid it. Part of it is we spend a lot less time in the character that I disliked. We don't spend any time in one of them, and the other one we spend a lot less time in their head. We got a little bit more depth and backstory to this character that made them stop. They're still gross, but they're also like, okay, this is interesting. What's going to happen? Like you're seeing two different things from them. And so I liked that we had that little bit of uncertainty introduced into this book. And then the other character goes through a beautiful growth arc, and I was just like, oh, thank God, you're not being dumb anymore. I still think I like the Farseer trilogy better, but I am enjoying this series more. I think, like, some of the things that I wanted to have happen, like, we got less of one of the points of view that I thought was pointless. And it made, like, it's so fascinating because I thought it was really well done in this book because we only have it like 2 or 3 times in this book. And it links into a specific, like, there's a specific part of the story that if we didn't have that point of view, you wouldn't understand what was going on. So we needed it. I just don't think we needed it until this book happened. I think if she had cut that and we'd had maybe some of the less icky parts of this character in the last book, things might have been different for me in the last book. Also, possibly if I read it physically, it might have been different. I feel like this is one that if I end up enjoying it and I end up rereading it, I'm going to get so much more out of that first book. I don't know. I'm mixed on how I feel about this series right now. So, but I still, if you like her writing style, I still think maybe pick it up because there are some really interesting things going on in this book. The next book that I finished was A Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. This is about Inez, and she ends up going to this very prestigious college, Catherine House, and the whole premise of Catherine House is you come for 3 years, you have no access to the outside world, and you're just there to study whatever it's a very kind of, we're gonna cut you off from everything so you can focus on your studies type thing. Sounds culty? Because it is culty. I gave this 3 stars. I thought that Elizabeth Thomas's writing was really well done in certain areas. I think that she did a fantastic job of describing what was going on, getting us in the character's head. I thought even though Inez is not necessarily a likable character, I thought that she was a very compelling and interesting character. There is so much about this book that could have had it being a 5-star because I was rooting for Inez the entire time. There's a whole bunch of there's so much I can't tell you, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens that you're sitting there going, oh, okay, this is happening for a reason. This is happening because we are going to, it's going to link into the main kind of creepy mystery type thing that's going on in this book. And then nothing. So many weird things that you're sitting there going, okay, keep track of that. Remember that this happened. Remember that that happened. Remember that this was going on. And you're waiting for it all to connect at the end. And only a fraction of those things connect, but so many of them are just weird things that stand out. And I was and then the ending happened, and it was just, that is 8 hours or 11 hours of my life. I don't know how many. I listen to them at more than my own time speed, but that's hours of my life I cannot get back for an ending that is very ambiguous, possibly completely undoes everything that happens at the end. Cal, who ended up buddy reading this with me, did mention that the main character doesn't have a lot of agency. She doesn't exercise a lot of agency. It's people getting the stuff done for her and putting the choice in front of her. I feel if you like vibes, if you like the academic setting, and you don't mind having endings that are a little bit open to interpretation and plots that are a little bit weird without explanation, I think that this could be a really good book for some people because I think it is really well written. I just think that there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with the plot that why did it happen? I do think that Elizabeth Thomas does a fantastic job of creating a cult-like atmosphere. There is a cult very close, they call themselves a church, but there's a cult very close to where I live. I'm 30 minutes from their central headquarters. It's real fun. It's in the next city over. It reminded me a lot about that particular cult. So much of it, yeah, it's a famous one. You've heard about it, but I don't want to give away too much because then it may give away certain parts of the plot. Jumping into this, I was like, oh, this is that. This is the same thing as, this is what's going on. I knew exactly what was going on because it felt so familiar because I kind of, it's, cults are fascinating, especially when there's one that's so close to you and you kind of know it, you've been in interviews where the people were definitely going to try and recruit you for the cult if you'd gotten the job. This was just a very frustrating book for me, the fact that there were so many little things that I'm sitting there thinking are clues and thinking that it's going to be some big thing that happens and then it just, which is probably more accurate, but I wanted more. I wanted more from the ending and more from this plot. I've read books where I could sit back and go, okay, I understand why the ending is the way that it is, and I understand that the group that this is written for, that's the ending that is probably going to, that makes sense to have the ending, that we didn't go into certain things. For this one, I was just what was the point? And the final book that I read for the month of April is the Avengers Initiative Group Group Buck. We have made Bucky a group thing. He is owned by the group. The final book that I read in April was the Avengers Reading Challenge group book, which was Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky by Kwame Mbalia. I gave this 5 stars, y'all. This was like reading Percy Jackson again for the first time, just about. It was so well done. I know some of the other co-hosts are going to argue with me about pacing stuff, possibly, and I didn't notice any issues with the pacing in this book. Honestly, I'm going to be honest, I thought it was fantastic. Basically, all of these kind of take that Percy Jackson model, but they put the author's own twist on it. And I love the way that Kwame Mbalia was able to kind of capture that fantastic middle grade, very mischievous main character type voice, type narration that is what makes so many of those kind of books stand out. And he was able to like just make it his own. Like everything about Tristan, he was such a well-realized, well-fleshed out character, and I love him, and people needed to not be mean to him. Now that I've gushed about it and told you how good it is, I guess I should tell you what it was about. This is about Tristan, and obviously, name's in the title. But he has just recently lost his best friend. He's really having a hard time with it. And then on top of that, he's just lost his first boxing match. His dad and his grandfather were both big boxers, and Tristan has just lost his very first match. And he's really beating himself up about it. And his grandfather is beating him up about it. And it's basically because of these two things, his parents are just like, why don't we get you out of the city for a little bit and let you go back to the grandparents? Like, you can spend some time with your grandparents and kind of get away from everything. In the course of this, he also has this journal that he and his friend were working on. They were writing down the stories of both West African mythology and American folklore, specifically Black American folklore. So it's a book full of stories about like John Henry and Brer Rabbit, and then also Anansi in the middle of that, because Anansi's in the middle of everything, let's be honest. So anyways, he's got this book. It was supposed to be a school project. Obviously, the teachers let that slide, considering that his partner that he was working on the project with died. So a magical creature shows up to steal this book, and in trying to get the book, that his best friend's journal, back from this little mischievous magical creature, he ends up damaging a tree on his parents' farm, which was holding back some bad stuff, and he ends up falling into this other world and ending up on Mid-Pass. And now they're having to deal with the consequences of him having ripped this giant hole in their sky. I'm really enjoying the experience of going through these Rick Riordan Presents books and being exposed to things that like I have maybe a surface level knowledge of, and getting to see them reinterpreted for a younger audience. I really enjoyed like this cast, this crew, the characters. I love the fact that Tristan was like, we had both this fantastical journey that was happening, and then we also have Tristan who's dealing with some very real world things that he's having to deal with. Like you don't, like, he doesn't just going in here, it's a distraction a little bit from his grief, but he doesn't escape it. It is still there, it is still with him. I'm really looking forward to reading some of Kwame Mbalia's other stuff, because he has a very, at least in this, and I know that's probably a stylized thing because it's the book it is, but he had just a really interesting way to turn certain phrases, to describe things. I really enjoyed listening to his writing style, because I did most of these I listened to an audiobook, because that's the kind of person that I am. Everything is an audiobook, because otherwise who has time? But I really enjoyed listening to his writing. I thought it was really well done as a like verbal storytelling. Speaking of oral storytelling, I loved the focus that they had in this on oral storytelling. Oral storytelling was used in such an interesting and clever way in the plot, in my opinion. And I know that that is because it is, oral storytelling is a very important part of certain storytelling traditions, including West African. So we have that mixture. Basically, I just came away from this like really kind of wanting to learn a little bit more of the folklore and mythology that this is based off of as well. Hi, hello, Margaret from the future here, coming at you from another video because I forgot, because I did not enter my books into Goodreads, and I looked primarily at my Bookly, which I started this months ago, so why would I see that in amongst the books that I read in April? I think we're on April. But I forgot to mention that I did finish Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. This keeps coming off and it's driving me nuts. I gave this 4 stars. This is the second book in the Farseer trilogy. I am really enjoying this trilogy. I do think, so this trilogy is really stressing me out. And this book was very stressful. So it took me a while to read. I wasn't, I was having a good time, but it was also not a good time. There are a lot of silly decisions being made by multiple people, but mostly by the dude who is going to be in charge of certain things at some point, and I am just annoyed that he's being so dumb. Choices were made. And there is a character in here that I absolutely loathe, and I just wish would stop. I just want to stop dealing with his shenanigans. But it was still really, really well written. She does such a good job of getting into Fitz's head, and at least for me, making what's going on interesting. I do find her a bit repetitive sometimes, but for the most part, like, I'm interested in what's happening. This is not a book for people who don't like kind of like sitting with the character and their thoughts necessarily. Like, that's not what I find repetitive. I find the fact that we cover the same things multiple times throughout the course of the book repetitive, and I think she could maybe not do that. I'm enjoying kind of the style of this book, which is very much like Fitz writing from, or someone writing Fitz's, well, it's first person, so Fitz writing from the future, kind of giving you an idea of how, of what happened during the course of these novels. So there is a whole bunch going on. There are a whole bunch of answers that I still want. So, and I do know that this somehow ties into the live ships at some point. So at some point I will finish it. I'm enjoying them, and I gave it 4 stars. And if you like really kind of, if you like fantasy where you really get to know your main character well, and you know why they make all of the dumb decisions they make, check it out. So let's talk about favorite, least favorite book. I think for least favorite book, we're gonna have to say Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. Again, I think this is partly not my book, but also there were definite like storytelling like flaws in the actual like construction of the story, in my opinion. I'm gonna say my favorite book was The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake, just because the ending was just such like a, like, boom, a punch. It was so well done, and I like the way that it was built. Just, it was really well done. Okay, guys, I just, like, left me reeling, didn't know what to do with my life, really mad I didn't have the second book. Kind of well done. If you're feeling chatty, let me know in the comments what your favorite and or least favorite book of the month of April was. If you are not feeling chatty, go ahead and give me the emoji, since we just kind of looked at our TBR this month and went, eh. So, like, did we do Aurelian? No. We barely did Fablen. Like, I don't even know how all of that is going to turn out because I haven't filmed that video yet. You'll know at this point how badly I did. But I have no idea, and I'm very concerned. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and check out some of the ones that are over here. I will have the video I mentioned earlier, the Dark Academia one, up here, and then whatever is newest on my channel down here. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye!